Hello, world. Does anybody even talk about anymore about hello world, like as like what old computer programmers used to say, like hello world, very simple computer program. Anyway, I'm old. This is real gray hair. Hey everybody, happy Friday. I'm Malcolm. I will be your host today on the CDO Matters live episode. Season's greetings. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. Happy whatever holiday you celebrate. Happy whatever tool, vehicle, means you use to get together with family and friends and to give thanks, because that's really what the season is about. I am thankful that you are joining me today to talk about large scale data migrations and consolidations. Oh, hold on a second, guys. All right. Well, I know LinkedIn feed is up because it just came through on my other browser window. And I forgot to mute my browser window. So I was hearing myself like 10 seconds delayed. And I lack the mental aptitude to be able to mute the browser window at the same time as talking to you because I am single threaded. Sad, but true. Anyway, hey, happy Friday. Season's greetings. Where is everybody calling from? Calling? What's the right way to say this? Where is everybody joining from? Right? Like, I guess that, again, that shows my age. But where is everybody joining from? I see a few folks. Hello, Jessica. Hello, Jay. Hello, Mary. Hello, Veronica. Hello, Paul. Hi, Tim. Hi, Thomas. Venkat. So glad you guys could join. A lot of MDM people, head of data governance, master data manager, head of data platforms, fantastic. Data governance specialist, fantastic. Awesome. You come to the right place because we're going to talk about MDM. We're going to talk about governance within a certain genre, certain realm. But before we do that, let's give people a few minutes to join. What are you all doing for the holidays? You don't have to tell me. Hopefully you've got wonderful plans. Hopefully you're going to spend time with family and or friends. For me, I will be spending time right here on my lovely little island here on the east coast of Florida. I'm so blessed. I live in an amazing place, especially in the winter time. There's no winter. I mean, outside today, the temperature will be in the mid 70s, which for everybody outside of the United States, 23, 24, something like that. And that's normal. I'm truly lucky. Now, I know what winter is like because I spent my first 25 years in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, shoveling snow. I can tell a story of shoveling snow every month but one. Like where I had to like shovel snow off of our driveway in the month of August, true story. And I had to shovel snow off my driveway as a kid in the month of June, true story. 1 month, July, 1 month, where as a kid growing up in Edmonton, I don't have a story to tell about shoveling snow. so, people say, "Oh man, you live in Florida, must be so lucky." Yeah, don't rub it in that you live in Florida. And sometimes I do because I know what the other extreme is like. I know what snow is like. I know what weather is like. I know what crappy weather is like. And you know what? Yes, at this time of year, I do like a white Christmas. That would be wonderful. I like a white Christmas, but honestly, often where I'm from at Christmas time, even though it's cold and even though it's Canada, it's pretty dry where I'm from, and it's not uncommon to be just brown. And I suspect that's true for a lot of the folks on who are joining today, where it's just kind of brown. So the white Christmas is kind of nice. Is it not? Right? I like that. I like the white Christmas. But I'm going to be here in Florida where it is green. Because it's green all year, and I'm looking forward to that because I'm going to spend some time heads down, spend some quality time with my two fur babies, Hugo and Teddy, who you may hear barking in the background, especially when the UPS guy shows up to drop off packages or USPS comes by. They lose their what. But looking forward to spending some time here with my wife Eva, taking some walks on the beach, working on my book. FYI, I'm writing a book. It'll be released next year on through Wiley Publishing, and it's all about data leadership. So more on that to come next year. But I'm most of the way through a book, which is kind of crazy to think about. I've like written something that is 70,000 words long, and more to come. So that's kind of what my holiday is going to be looking like. Low key, just staying here, maybe doing a little time, spending some time with a fishing pole in my hand. I'm very lucky that I live very close to water. I live on a very narrow little island, and I have water on two sides. About 200 meters that way is water, and about 700 meters that way is water, which is great in the wintertime when there's no hurricanes and I can just go grab a fishing pole and just stand there. But when there's hurricane season, yeah, got to be aware of that stuff. But hopefully you have fun plans for the holidays. Hopefully you find some time to unwind. Hopefully you find some time to spend together with friends. And because that's what it's all about. I love the holiday season, just getting together with people and being with family and taking time to give thanks. I know that was Thanksgiving here in the US, but I do believe that honestly, that this is really about gratitude and about taking stock, looking back over the last year. That's a big part of what I like to do as well, is kind of, did I do what I wanted to do? And what do I need to do differently next year? So anyway, enough about me. Where's everybody calling from? Hey, Nick. Duluth, Minnesota. Duluth. I was in your backyard. We talked about this before, I think, Nick. I made it pretty darn close. Marquette, Michigan. So pretty up there. My goodness. Lake Superior is not a lake. It's an ocean. It's an ocean that just happens to be surrounded by water. But I never made it to Duluth, but I'd love to get up there. Chilly Atlanta. Geez, Atlanta, really that chilly? Probably not. Maybe in the 40s or 50s, but United Kingdom, Kenya. Now, Najori, I don't think you can be in two places at once. Maybe you're riding these magical, drones that are flying around the U.S. and you're shuttling back and forth between Kenya and the United Kingdom. But wherever you are, whether that is Nairobi or whether that is in London, maybe you're not in the city. That's cool. I'm glad for you to be here today. Thank you. Hello, Arvin from India. My gosh, what time is it in India right now? Is it in the middle of the night? If you do business with the U.S., sadly, I suspect you're quite used to being working at very, very strange hours. But 9:30 p.m. Good grief. Nick would love to come visit. Absolutely. So pretty up there, and land is really affordable. Really, really affordable. Like in the UP of Michigan, you can get 100 acres of land for 50 grand. It's insane. Just saying hi before we get. I'm both. You're representing both countries. Okay, Jadori, fantastic. I represent the U.S. and Canada and Ireland. I represent three. So although I haven't been to Ireland in a while, I miss it. My mother's Irish. I have an Irish passport, Canadian passport, and U.S. passports as well, which is kind of cool. If there's ever a problem and if the zombies come, I have a lot of options. All right, guys, don't forget a part of this as well is Q&A. So I'm going to talk about data migrations, data consolidations, and the role that MDM and governance plays in those. But if you've got questions, fire them off. Let me know. Let me have it. Happy to take questions on literally anything. This started as an Ask Me Anything session, and it still is an Ask Me Anything. So if you were here and you had specific questions about MDM, data quality, data governance, data strategy, let me have it, because that's what I do. That's what I do. Let's talk about what I mean by a large-scale data consolidation or aggregation. Well, many of us, I'm sure we've probably worked on some of these projects in the past. There's a few different flavors. Flavor number one is actually happening quite regularly these days, which is a large-scale kind of relocation of an analytical infrastructure from on-prem to cloud. Right, you are moving, and I've heard this more times than I could count at Gartner summits or at other industry events over the last few years where we have sponsored, and I've had the opportunity to talk to people who've come up to the booth. So many people are still saying, hey, we're moving to Azure. We're moving to AWS. It's still happening. By my guess, just based on my anecdotal, non-scientific research, that there's still a good 30 to 40% of companies who are thinking about migrating to the cloud, but who have not. That's an example to me, of an extremely large scale data migration, right? You're taking data out of an on-prem database and you're going to move it into Azure, right? Maybe you have got your own solutions. Maybe you've got a legacy solution, but that's flavor number one. Flavor number two would be business applications. So you've got a database sitting behind SAP, you've got a database sitting behind Salesforce.com, you've got database in an application, and you are moving it from a legacy hosting infrastructure to a cloud-based infrastructure. So probably some of you right now are working on an SAP migration, I bet. I've lost track of how many data professionals, consultants that I've talked to over the last 3 years that are working on SAP migrations. I mean, it is mind-boggling how much money is involved here and how much work is involved here. Man, maybe in my next life I'll come back as an SAP consultant, because there is so much money to be made in helping companies make these large jumps. And SAP does this, like, every few years they'll do a major database upgrade, like S4. They'll do cloud movements, you name it. But I'm picking on SAP a little bit here, but it happens with lots. It doesn't matter. It could be any business application where you're moving from legacy infrastructure to new infrastructure. That's certainly a flavor. There's a lot of like kind of related flavors to that, whether it's an analytical infrastructure where you're moving to the cloud, whether you're moving some sort of business application to the cloud. Maybe you're just consolidating existing systems. Maybe you're already in the cloud. That's kind of flavor number three, where you've got, for example, multiple instances of Salesforce.com or multiple instances of an ERP. Maybe you've got some SAP, you've got some JD Edwards, you've got some whatever, right? And you want to kind of try to bring all those together. There's a lot of CIOs out there who still think and who are still taking that approach of physical consolidation of disparate ERP systems. This is happening. This is widespread within the manufacturing industry, where a lot of manufacturing companies that grow through acquisition end up getting these, pockets, these silos of ERPs. It's so common. I think the worst I've ever heard was 128. Was talking to a company the other day who had 7. But I've talked to companies anywhere from 2 to 3 to 128, and where they are planning to physically consolidate under a single business application and single database infrastructure supporting that business application. So those are the 3 common themes of what I'm calling kind of a data migration or data consolidation, right? So if you've seen anything different, or if you think of a kind of a different pattern, maybe let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. But I think those are kind of the big catch-alls. So what does MDM have to do with any of this? What does data governance have to do with any of this? Well, I would argue that the steps you would take as a data engineer, database administrator, data person, data analyst, data steward, data governor, the steps that you would need to take to support one of those 3 flavors of a data consolidation or of a migration end up looking exactly like what you would do for MDM, right? So let's kind of break down the component pieces. Whether you were doing this from, chances are first step would be some sort of data profile, right? You got to understand what you've got in all of these legacy systems. So data profile, data discovery, of course, you'd also, as a part of that, you'd want to understand the business processes sitting underneath all of the data. How did that data come to be? Why am I seeing what I'm seeing? But some sort of discovery and profiling exercise. Yes, those are typically being done by data catalog or metadata management applications, not necessarily MDM applications, but that's a necessary, I would argue, dependent first step. It's understanding what you've got out there. Then you're going to do some analysis of that data, right? You're going to try to see where there's commonalities or where there's differences in structure or definition or quality, right? The very technical phrase I use here in the past when I've done this is you're going to put the data into various buckets. A bucket, very technical term, a bucket. But basically you're going to figure out where there's commonalities in the data, where there's not commonalities in the data. You're going to do things like even understand last update dates to understand, okay, has this data been around a long time? You're even going to try to understand, okay, are there any active transactions or any active things happening to this data? Is it being used, or is it just hasn't been touched in decades? This is kind of what I mean by some sort of profiling or discovery process. You're probably going to do that first pass of that when the data is where it already is, right? Where the data is in all of those various systems. You're going to then bring the data into some sort of sandbox environment. You're going to take, whether it is portions of it or all of it. Now, this is copies, right? Things are still running in production, but you're going to take all that data and you're going to drop it into some sort of landing zone, some sort of sandbox where you can do some deeper discovery on that data, where you can start to maybe even apply some rules to the data to get to the point of start transforming it, perhaps, right? So you're going to start applying data quality rules to it. You're going to do some transformations to that data because there is a future state that you need to align to, right? You know where you're going, right? So you know what the structures are going to be. You know what the database tables are going to look like of where you're going. You know how the data is going to need to physically conform with what you're doing. So you're going to transform the data into some kind of standardized physical format. You're also going to have to apply some data quality rules to say, okay, what is the data going to look like in the future state? By the way, and I've seen this happen. It amazes me when I see this stuff, but it happens all the time. If you are I'm looking at titles. If you are a data governor, you're a data manager, you are a data governance specialist or an administrator, and you have a senior executive telling you, well, yeah, we got to move all the data, but I think we should just do a lift and shift. Face plant. No. Don't do the lift and shift. Do whatever you need to do, build the business case, ring a bell, wave a flag, lift and shift. You're just kicking the can down the road, right? And what do I mean by lift and shift? Take the data as it is, drop it into the future state, but figure a way to kind of hack the future state so it supports the legacy paradigm. So it supports the legacy data structures, the legacy data definitions, or the legacy data quality standards. I see this all the time. It happens in SAP all the time, where we are moving to S/4HANA, but where you basically, and I can't even imagine why SAP, like, they can't force their customers to not do it, but where you take legacy structures and cram it into the new SAP. It's like you're just kicking the can. You're pushing the pain, as it were, because you're gonna, particularly with SAP, when you're talking about S/4HANA, I mean, the data structures are fundamentally different, right? You've got a party-based model in S/4HANA. ECC, you don't. You've got separate tables for vendor and supplier and customer. And if you bring that forward and drop it into the new environment, and it doesn't matter whether it's SAP, it could be anything. Could be any environment, could be any analytical infrastructure. If you're basically just taking the old data and putting it into the new thing, you're just kicking the can. You're not solving any of the problems. You're pushing the pain to the future and making somebody in the future solve those problems, because you will have to solve those problems. It would be kind of like, metaphorically speaking, right, taking the engine out of a Volkswagen and dropping it into a Lamborghini body, right? Like, on the outside, looks great. It's a Lambo, but it's not a Lambo. It's a V4 VW from the 70s, right? Like, do you really want to do? No, you don't. You don't. So if you catch wind of executives, or you are that executive, or thinking, well, maybe we could just lift and shift. That's the cheapest, fastest way to. Oh, now don't get me wrong. There's a lot of work here. There's a lot of work here, and it's going to be painful, because inevitably, when you are doing that discovery, when you are doing it, it is inevitable you find a ton of both data debt, right? Data debt and business process debt. You will not avoid it. You will find it, right? So when you do this discovery, you'll find all these anomalies. And this is exactly what you do in MDM, by the way. This is exactly what happens when you start tinkering with MDM. When you bring data into one place and you start to do some discovery on it, you're going to find all sorts of stuff. You're like, why is that there? Like, why is there like /M, right, appended at the rear of 20% of our customer records for whatever reason, right? Like, you'll find that stuff. I've like, trust me, you're going to find it, and it'll be something like, oh, well, we had to do that /M. That's for our Michael, our salesperson, because he required a special compensation package that we couldn't support through the data somehow, some way. So to make sure that Michael got paid correctly on all of his accounts, we just added /M after the customer name, right? Like that kind of stuff, right? If you've been in data long enough, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, you could call it shenanigans if you wish. It's more, that kind of stuff drives data people crazy, and I get it. But the business needs to keep running, and Michael needs to get paid because he's selling. And thank goodness he's selling, because I suck at selling, right? Like, you don't want me selling, and I don't want to sell. And so I'm grateful Michael is there doing his thing and selling, and I want him to get paid. And they're generally positive intentions. People are just trying to do what they need to do with a limited amount of time and a limited amount of resources. And maybe it's a really inflexible, rigid system. SAP tends to be a little inflexible and tends to be a little rigid, right? So, I don't necessarily blame people for doing those kinds of things. To me, that is an indication that the operating model of, in this case, maybe the engineering group that is supporting SAP isn't flexible enough. Maybe there wasn't enough flexibility in the, or maybe it was just a really old and outdated data model that just couldn't support Michael getting paid. Whatever the reasons are, I believe people generally have positive intentions, but still, I get it. That stuff drives data people crazy. My point is, you will find this. You will find all of these anomalies. So there's a lot of work here. So I do, to a certain degree, understand the temptation to lift and shift, because it's a strong temptation. It's like, oh man, like we're gonna have to fix all this stuff, because I don't want /M showing up in my new consolidated, bright, shiny S/4HANA deployment of my ERP system. I don't want that there. And I get it, because you really don't. Correct. You don't. But I do see the temptation there. So sorry, wow, my Canadian just came out. I said sorry. That's a Canadian accent, for those who don't know. Usually I don't have any indication of a Canadian accent, but it just came out. A little aside there on the lifting and shifting, and we should probably avoid lifting and shifting. So where was I? Well, I was talking about bringing all the data from wherever the multiple places is, right? Multiple instances of ERP systems or CRM systems, or from a legacy analytical infrastructure. You're going to bring all that data generally into some sort of sandbox type environment, pre-prod environment, and you're going to apply data quality rules to it. Those data quality rules, right? Those transformations, you can do that two ways. You can do it formally through some sort of a data governance process, right? Where a data governance group is involved in helping make the decisions of what those definitions should be, what the transformation should be, what the quality standards should be. Or you could do it informally, where you say, oh, well, we don't have a data governance committee, and it's just going to be the business analysts that are going to go figure out the rules. A lot of companies take the kind of the latter, where some of these projects, believe it or not, are running outside of kind of the data function. I saw this off when I was at Gartner. Whether you formalize it or whether you don't formalize it, you're doing data governance. You just are. You just are, because you're defining policies. How do I define something? What are the quality standards for it? How do I structure it? What are the relationships between customers and suppliers and parts and assets and materials? Those are governance decisions. They are. So you're going to do it one way or the other, whether you are formal, like data governance committee with people whose job it is to help with that stuff, or you've got other people doing it kind of informally. You're doing it one way or the other. So when I would have conversations with CDOs or CIOs when I was at Gartner and we were talking about this stuff, they would say, well, we're going to do this. And I would ask, well, what's your plan for governance? It's like, well, we don't need that here. Well, yeah, you do. Whether you call it that or not, you could call it a business rule. Sure. Call it a business rule. Call it a transformation. Call it whatever. Call it Fred. I don't care, but it's going to be governance. So what you will also be doing, if you haven't kind of caught onto this by now, what you will also be doing is, yes, folks, MDM. Absolutely, you're going to be doing MDM. All of the steps that I described, taking data out of these legacy systems, putting it into one place so you can apply some consistent rules to it. And then, by the way, pushing it back into the future state, wherever you're going, right? Maybe it's Azure. Maybe it's S4HANA, doesn't matter. You're going to push all of that normalized, cleansed, rationalized, dare I say, mastered data. You're going to push that into wherever you're going. That's MDM. If that's that's it. So again, I would have these conversations with CIOs, and they're like, "Oh, well, no, we don't need MDM. We're not doing MDM." I'm like, "It's exactly what you're doing. It is exactly what you were doing. Now you can formalize it, or you can not formalize it, but it doesn't matter. That's what you're going to be doing." And for a lot of the conversations I had with executives, that was kind of like a light bulb moment. They're like, well, now you put it that way. Okay, that makes sense. And it's at that point where a lot of executives would key into the idea is like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so I could actually use, instead of having database engineers and data engineers kind of manually doing this stuff, with manually building integrations and manually building, all of these processes out, I could actually use a scalable, flexible, extensible, configurable tool to do it, like an MDM. And it just so happens that a non-trivial number of companies have actually built businesses around doing just that. A great example is a company called Sanity. Information builders is another. The list here is long, where there's these primarily consulting companies that are helping their clients with these migrations build out software to help with the migrations. The software ends up being MDM, right? In the case of Sanity, that's exactly what they did. And then you have a software platform, right? And where you're using that software platform to help with the migration. And not only could it be used for the migration, it could be used for anything else down the road that you want to apply a similar model to. Maybe it's a merger and acquisition. These types of things are very attractive manufacturing companies who continue to buy more and more companies. So MDM will make that very easy to integrate new data down the road should you acquire somebody, or should you integrate another legacy system into that infrastructure. So tell me if you think I'm wrong, but when you start talking about some of these large migrations or consolidations, I would argue what you are absolutely positively doing is MDM. Anybody disagree? First time caller. Hey, Thomas. I love the metaphor. First time caller. Oh, thanks, Beth. I was trying to figure out your comment. Agree, just say no. I think that was to the lift and shift. Yeah, glad you're in the. Maybe we should make a T-shirt. Don't lift and shift. That'd actually be kind of funny. That'd be kind of funny. Don't lift and shift. Thomas, I'm going to have to put on my glasses. In my advancing years, I'm going to put on my glasses to read your comment. First time caller, joiner. Love it. Thanks, Thomas. Wanted data.gov guy. Wannabe. You already are. You're here. You already are. Context in a federal agency moving to Azure with no data gov apps in cloud stack. Very common. ETA for phase one completion is mid-2020 completion of what? Moving to Azure? Okay. So first reaction is that sounds aggressive. Mid-2020 history office prioritized collection over quality for 10 years. Yeah, not uncommon. Data gov role established 2 years ago. Okay. Persuaded them to adopt department's data gov platform, Calibra. Yeah. Great piece of software. Calibra is great. Beginning from scratch with minimal support buy-in. Very common. I've been there. Question, are catalog, MDM, or data governance apps in Azure necessary, or can Calibra suffice? Oh, thank you, Kayla, for putting the question up within Goalcast. I guess I didn't need my glasses after all. Does this make me look infinitely smarter? Great question, Thomas. Maybe not. As data catalogs go, and I call it a data catalog, you could call it also a metadata management solution. I don't like the term a data governance platform. The data catalog vendors, Calibra, Elation, Microsoft Purview, the list is long. There's lots of them. Call themselves governance platforms, and I don't really understand that, because there is no one governance platform. There's no one governance platform. Data governance involves defining policies and enforcing policies, right? You can write some policies and have them exist in Calibra, but when it comes to enforcing policies, that happens in a CRM system. What are the rules for a salesperson to create a new account? That's a governance policy. When are things accurate in an ERP system? What are the fields that what are the attributes of a supplier, right? And what are the accepted values for those attributes? Those are all governance decisions. And the idea that you could, and this isn't you, Thomas. I'm ranting now on vendors, by the way. It's not you, but vendors out there. This is a data governance solution. I don't know how anybody who sells a data catalog says it's a data governance solution when they do like 10% of all governance in a given space. So rant over. But when it comes to tools, Calibra in Azure, Calibra is a great choice. What I would hear consistently when I was a Gartner analyst talking to people about these tools all day, every day, was that the number one concern about Calibra, and if there are Calibra people out there, keep me honest. I'm open to being wrong, but the number one concern I would hear consistently about Calibra is a lack of integrations to other systems and the work required to integrate Calibra to other systems. I'll give you an example. Chances are pretty good, Thomas, that you will likely do some form of MDM, Master Data Management. MDM, Master Data Management, is a discipline that allows for creation of shared data quality standards, semantic consistency, consistent views of relationships of the data that matters the most for your organization, the shared data of your organization, customers, assets, materials, suppliers. Chances are pretty good that as you advance in this journey into Azure, you'll probably need some form of MDM. Your data catalog and your MDM system need to talk. They absolutely positively need to talk. The data catalog needs to be aware of what data is being mastered in an MDM hub. What is the system of record for that hub? Or for that data, I should say. That's one very, very small example of those systems need to talk. Ultimately, Calibra would be talking with just about everything in your data management environment. It'd be talking to a data quality tool that you were used to enforcing some data quality rules. It would even necessarily, in the future state, be talking to business applications, right? Does Joe Blow have the ability to create a new account record in Salesforce, for example, right? In a perfect world, Calibra would be talking to everything. Now, this isn't a knock on Calibra. All data governance, metadata management, data catalog tools suffer this challenge of a lack of meaningful integration to other applications in the data management ecosystem, with a few exceptions. I'm not here to try to sell, but for example, Purview, which many believe is when it comes to features and functions and capabilities, is not necessarily yet on par with an Elation or a Calibra, but Purview is deeply integrated to other applications in the Microsoft data management ecosystem, including Profisee, which is an MDM solution that is native to the Azure ecosystem. So there are some advantages to going with a hyperscaler like a Microsoft for support with data management tools. You're not there. You've got Calibra. It's a great solution. I think you can stick with it. I think that you could do great things with Calibra. I lost track. What was the second? Sorry. I tend to rant. All right, back to the goggles. Question: are catalog, MDM, and data governance apps in Azure necessary, or can Calibra suffice? No, Calibra can suffice, but you're probably going to need an MDM. You're probably going to need some form of an MDM. I suspect, right? If you're in the federal space, I don't know how you don't have one. No, but Calibra's good. Calibra's a world-class solution. It just takes a non-trivial amount of work to integrate it to other systems as a part of that data management ecosystem. Primarily, what tool do you use for integration, right? Do you have a data integration tool, right? Maybe in Azure, you're going to use ADF, Azure Data Factory. Hey, great, fantastic. What about data quality? Are you going to use a data quality tool, right? Like an Informatica or others, right? Chances are a lot of companies are using Informatica for data quality. What are you going to use for MDM, right? So connecting Calibra to talk to those things is going to be really, really important. Talk to, very technical term. Question from Peter. Hey, previous Profisee guy. Thanks, Peter. You ever seen a client company try to use data warehouse intelligence tool for MDM? What do you mean as the persistence layer for MDM? I'm experiencing this now with an organizational push to use Oh, okay. Thanks, Kayla. We're also experiencing now with an organizational push to use SAP DataSphere to do MDM while building the business case for a dedicated MDM application launch. Very difficult in the right way. A lot of rework to happen. Yeah, that's the problem. You could get into an academic discussion about the right way, but the rework is most certainly the biggest concern here, right? The cost of MDM solutions, this is me putting on my Gartner hat, the cost of MDM solutions has been coming down, thanks to the cloud, thanks to a very healthy market with a lot of healthy competition. The cost of MDM solutions has been coming down and down and down. And it's to the point where I don't know why. Well, I do know why companies choose it, but I don't know why. I don't see at a high level the business value of hacking a solution and the amount of work required to hack, and I'm using the phrase hack, to hack some sort of an MDM solution that can meet 30, 40, 50% of your capabilities. I don't see the business benefit in spending money to do that when the amount of money that you would spend to get 80 to 90% of your capabilities is marginal and maybe even less than what you would pay to build out the hack. I had this conversation a lot when I was at Gartner, and there's a lot of people particularly in the data engineering space, and I'm not trying to pick on data engineers, but I will a little bit. People in the kind of software development, software engineering, and data engineering space that see kind of MDM as a pipeline problem and not a problem of scale. Meaning a lot of people think that they can kind of build these onesie, twosie, one-off kind of pipeline processes. They can hack in some entity resolution, some basic matching. They can use a Python library to do some matching, and poof, there you are. We've got MDM. Or we could even do things like use our data lake as a persistence layer for MDM, and there it is. And could you get to 40% of your capabilities by doing that? Probably. How much is it going to cost you to get it? Right. And then when you have to rework, what are the costs of that going to be? So I don't know. I don't know your business dynamics. I don't know the economics here. I don't know whether you'd be using consultants to do this or not. But what I know about the cost of MDM and having run an engineering group, I mean, the all-in FTE cost for a capable data engineer or capable software engineer, the 1 year cost for that person, you could get an enterprise class MDM for less than that, for significantly less than that. So, not to mention the fact you're building out a solution that is going to require maintenance and require care and feeding. I in the 1,500 conversations that I had as an analyst when I was talking about build or buy or hack or buy, and the hack always came up, right? I can build out a data pipeline. I can do this in a complex ETL script. I'd hear that all the time. I can do this. I don't need this. The cost and effort to do that is just in all the 1,500 conversations I had, I can't remember one where I had a kind of an honest, open exchange and like, okay, let's talk about the problem we're trying to solve. Right? Let's talk about the benefits. Let's talk about the cost of building this, where that was the better, more viable, least cost of effective approach. I just can't recall. So that's my 2 cents on that, Peter. And thank you for asking. And by the way, would happily talk. Like, connect me on LinkedIn. I mean, if you can, happily talk to managers, directors, VPs about it. Right? Not because I'm trying to sell, but because I'm trying to avoid a lot of that feature rework down the road, right? Because there will be rework there. Because if you're to the point of like thinking you are close to needing an MDM, you probably do. Thanks for the question, Peter. All right. You're welcome, Thomas. Glad that helped. Ravi. Is that Ravi Krishnappa? I turned my LinkedIn off. Hey, Ravi, if it is you, I hope you got the document this morning. How about Informatica Cloud? It has ETL, ELT, DQ, MDM, and data governance, and good option for data lineage. Yeah, so Informatica's will when it comes to MDM and data governance and data quality, data lineage, data, pretty much anything, Informatica is going to check every box. I mean, they'll check every box. They are the top right in the Magic Quadrant of every data management Magic Quadrant there is. so they're top right on data quality. They were top right on MDM when we had an MDM Magic Quadrant. They were top right on data integration, right? They're top right, I think, on active metadata management, the new MQ that replaced the old metadata management. I don't know. So you're not going to go wrong with Informatica. You probably won't, right? However, Informatica is expensive. Okay, it is expensive. That is the number one concern that I heard when I was an analyst. Number two concern was complexity, right? The level of native integration between these applications is consistently, based on my experience and what I heard, is consistently being oversold. Meaning there is work there to make these things all play nice together. Okay. And typically Informatica is going to sell you multiple solutions. So when it comes to a deployment, things get really complex. Okay. So we're talking months and months and months. Yeah. The RFP, if you're doing the RFP and you're just looking at all the capabilities, must do this, must do this, must do this, must do this, check, 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 check. Informatica is going to check every box. It will be expensive. It will be complex to integrate. It will be complex to deploy. Okay. But based on my experiences, if you are pro Informatica, maybe you've got a different story. I would love to hear a different story. Maybe it was quick to implement. So I mean, it's the Cadillac. Maybe that's a bad example for anybody who's outside of the US. And Cadillac's kind of an old brand, but so it's the Lambo. It's the Lamborghini. And a lot of people choose Informatica for that very reason. So great solution, great tools. The company. I'm hearing less of Informatica. I'm actually hearing a lot of companies switch away from Informatica. There was news last year about the possibility of Salesforce buying Informatica. That seemed to have died on the vine. But to me, as a CDO and a data leader, like that would have this little like ding in the back of my brain. It's like, okay, wait a minute, hold on. Like, is Informatica for sale? Maybe somebody just pushed that out to the media. Maybe it's complete junk. Maybe the story is ridiculous and it's not happening. But Informatica is an amazing product, and they seem to be, in my opinion, they seem to be losing a little bit of traction in the market for whatever reason. I think it has to do with those complexities, and I think it has to do with those costs as well. My opinion. But when it comes to capabilities, they're tops. More questions. Sineb on LinkedIn. What strategies do you recommend for ensuring data accuracy and consistency during large scale, particularly dealing with hierarchies that vary across regions while balancing time constraints? Oh my goodness. Accuracy and consistency during. That's the hard part of the question, I think. During. I think that is the hard part. And if anybody's got some guidance here, let me know on the chat, because there's no easy answer here. Particularly when we know that big bangs are a recipe for disaster. Right? We know this. Right? Like no big bang. Just no big bang, which means you're going to have to pick away at this, which means there are consistency issues that will arise. They're inevitable, right? There will be some in the old and some in the new. And how do you deal with that? Well, you need to deal with it, but there will be kind of ongoing reconciliations between the old and the new that I think are, as a part of a transitional phase, that I think are partially unavoidable, particularly if you phase this out. Question is, how do you phase it? Most of the time I see data people, tinkering with the idea of a domain driven, whether that domain is more of an object like customer, supplier, or whether the domain is a line of business, like marketing, supply chain, you name it. I think the domain as a line of business makes way more sense, because in a perfect world, I would manage the transition based on business processes. Can you carve out a specific business process and have that process move over? An example would be creating a new supplier, for example, creating a new customer. Can you do this on a process-based perspective? Yes, you can, but there will be complexities in that transition, because you'll be treating one subset of supplier data different than another subset of supplier data. So that's the hard part. I don't have a lot of magic answers here. I do know that through the transition, you need to be very, very careful about keeping these environments in sync, and it won't be an easy task. It won't be an easy task, but it will still be better than the Big Bang. And guys, you're experts in all this. I would love to hear your perspectives. And if you've done this, how have you done it? Have you done things like lock down the legacy environment, right? Like maybe in the legacy environment for 6 months, and I doubt you did this, but maybe there was a certain amount of time where you just locked it down and said no new something, or no changes to something, right? Where you're only introducing the changes over here. This starts to get pretty complex, and would love to hear your perspectives on it. I think that was kind of the heart of the question that you're asking, which is during, and that is the really, really hard part. And I am failing at giving a very, very compelling answer, because I think there's so much detail here that it would extend well beyond a LinkedIn live chat. But if people have guidance here, let Zeneb know. Reach out to Zeneb and say, hey, we did this at my company, and here's how we manage consistency between the old and the new. That could be cool. Oh, different Ravi. Okay, thanks. Ravi Poundy. Thanks, Ravi. Glad you could make it today. Marnik on LinkedIn. Do you think there's a need to first do some sort of basics around data governance before you are able to start successful MDM? That is a fantastic question. And the answer is, it depends. Yes, you need to. Now, it depends what you mean by do data governance. And I mentioned this earlier, right? If you're going to do MDM, let's take the most basic form of MDM, which is known as an analytical style of MDM, where you've got Acme, Acme Inc., Acme Co., Acme LLC. You've got 4 records for Acme, and it could be a person, Joe Smith, Joseph Smith, doesn't matter. But you've got 4 records for Acme, maybe across 4 instances of an ERP. Maybe you've got them in a single instance, but you've got 4 records for Acme. And what you were trying to do in an analytical style of MDM is find a way to successfully link all them together under some new master ID, so that when it comes to building reports for how much money are you making from Acme, right? How many open opportunities do they have, and on and on and on. You can use that master ID to aggregate transactional data for Acme correctly in a report. Okay, that is the most basic form of MDM, and it's something that I firmly recommend as a great starting point. A lot of people refer to that as a 360. You could build a 360 for Acme, for your customers. What data governance is needed for that? I would argue you need the best approach that you can take is an MVP approach, minimum viable product, and it's kind of it's a different perspective on MDM, and I'm not talking necessarily about a product. What I'm talking about, what is the minimum amount of governance you would need in order to drive value for the customer? Okay, what's the minimum amount of governance you would need in order to solve providing a 360-degree view of your relationship with Acme? And I would argue that there's going to be value in a 300-degree view. There's probably even going to be value in a 280-degree view, or maybe a 180-degree view. Maybe just linking half of your systems together instead of all of your systems. Maybe you've got 20 different ERPs and you're trying to build a 360. There's probably value in your customers to just link 4 or 5 of them together instead of all 20, right? So you don't necessarily need to go for the full 360. My point being, what is the minimum amount of governance you can get away with and still solve the problem? Well, you need to come up with a customer definition. How do I define Acme? You'd have to have some quality standards for what is the consolidated record going to look like, right? That, by the way, is basically just a placeholder sitting in an MDM hub. You may use that consolidated gold master record, as it were, to visually represent the consolidated transaction report, the consolidated customer report, whatever it is. What are the quality standards for creating that, right? Who can see that, right? Some access and security concerns. How do I define relationships between Acme and other customers, or Acme and its parent company? So you have to have some rules around relationships. You'd have to have some rules around quality standards, matching, right? How do I uniquely identify a customer record? When is it accurate? When is it inaccurate? I would argue that's the minimum amount you need for governance. So when we look at like the DAMA wheel, if you're familiar with DAMA or the DMBOK, it's got like 10 things on it, right? There's ethics, there's security, there's like all of these things that we need to get. There's metadata management, there's data quality, there's master data management. I don't need to go into the DMBOK, but if you were to do all of those things, it's going to take some time. But I would argue you don't need to do all those things to solve that problem. To solve the problem, all you need to do are the things that I was talking about. So to answer your question, do you need to do governance? Yes. But what does that governance look like? What does it look like, right? Is it the minimum amount or is it something bigger? I would say stick to the minimum amount. Maybe you can hear my dogs barking in the background because the UPS guy came and rang the doorbell. Other questions? So hopefully that answered your question, Marnik. I hope. Oh, another thing, by the way, thinking about dependent actions that you need to enable MDM. Here's something to think about. If you're going to solve that one problem, and maybe this isn't the problem, but I would recommend it's a great place to start with MDM, that analytical view, the 360-degree view. Do you need to clean up any of that data before you embark on this? Answer, no, you don't. You don't. All you're trying to do is to link it all together, right? That's all you're trying to do is to link it all together. I talk with so many data professionals who say, well, I'm going to do MDM. That means I need to go clean up all my source records. No, to do an analytical MDM, actually, you don't. Sometimes the data may be so bad that you can't actually successfully match on it, right? You may think it's Acme, but it's just so bad that you don't know what to do with it. In which case, it is what it is. The key thing here is that you work with people in the business to understand what is going to drive value. What business processes are you trying to optimize or make more efficient through this 360-degree view? And what if I matched 80% of our data together? What if I matched 70% of our data together? Is that still valuable to you? What they're going to say is, yes, it is still valuable to me. If I have 80% of my view of my relationship with Acme, that's fantastic because today I've got 0, or it takes me 4 weeks to manually run the report to try to do it. There's still value there, even if you've got some records that are so bad, you can't successfully match them. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But I would argue instead of spending months and months and months and months and months to clean up the data in advance, do the 360, build it, see what falls out, see if there's still value there for the customer, which I'm sure there will be. Fix the stuff after the fact. Drive value first, then address some of those bigger questions like, okay, maybe a data quality, maybe data cleanup, right? Like maybe you're investing in a broader data governance framework, for example. So hopefully that makes sense. Back to the goggles. Najor is making a comment. Yes, you do need some. I agree. Oh, data owner. Oh, this could be interesting. It's the right way to say this. Master data, by definition, is widely shared across the organization. It's your customer data, it's your supplier data, it's your product data, it's your asset data. It is widely shared. People in sales and finance and even supply chain to a certain degree have an interest in customer data. So who owns the customer? Is it correct to say that one person can own customer? Now, I fully acknowledge that best practices, at least defined by DAMA, would say you need an owner. When it comes to master data, ownership is inherently a collaborative exercise. You can have one person coordinate, as it were, efforts to reach that common customer definition across the organization. You can have